In this video, I'm going to talk about layout and assembly for ADS 2021. One challenge our customers face is that designs are getting really complex, with many different technologies integrated together, and managing all these technologies can be difficult. In ADS, our layout tool can work for both package and IC designs, and that environment ultimately facilitates easier assembly of technologies, regardless of whether the designs were brought in from other tools or built directly in ADS. So for ADS 2021, we've really focused on improving package layout. Now, one common artifact in package layout is called a teardrop. This is a piece of tapered metal that's added to the interfaces between traces and vias. This is necessary for manufacturing purposes, but it can also have electrical implications on your design, and that requires EM analysis to understand. In ADS 2021, you can automatically insert a teardrop when you're creating a new trace, or you can also add teardrops to an existing trace on your layout after it's already been drawn. Teardrops can be configured in the trace dialog, but sometimes it's better to set those up in the technology constraints. So to add a teardrop in the technology constraints, you can just go to Options, Technology, Constraints Manager, and then add a teardrop rule for the layers you want and specify the parameters. You can also add constraints for clearances and vias as well. Another commonly used object in package layout is fill planes. Sometimes you need to customize the fill to avoid a specific area in your layout, and that's done using a keep-out shape. Now in ADS 2021, we've expanded the ability to create and modify keep-out objects. So now it's possible to use circles or even polygons to specify fill plane clearances. Here's an example. I will generate a keep-out in my fill plane, in this case using a circular shape. And I can just draw a shape and then regenerate the plane over top of it. Now, if I wanted to modify this keep-out later, it's possible to do this in ADS 2021 as well. I can just go and check this new selection filter for keep-outs, and then I can go back and modify the circle and regenerate the fill plane, and it updates. One challenge I think both IC and package designers run into when they're working in a dense layout is the selection of objects. Now, our layout tool already has a way to cycle select using spacebar, which often makes it easier, especially for IC designs, to pick the right layer. But sometimes for packages, you've got a component that you want to operate on, and you know what the component's called, but it's harder to select in a dense layout. Well, in ADS 2021, you can now use the Navigator docking window to find a particular component or instance in your design. In fact, you can even search for it, and then you can modify the component directly from this window by right-clicking, so you don't need to go back to the layout window to perform operations on it. Okay, finally we come to assembly. In ADS, different technology databases can be assembled together using a feature called Smart Mount. Now, Smart Mount typically merges layers at the technology interfaces, so just as an example, let's take a look at this Mimic IC here. As we push down into that, that's built using a different technology database than the package it's mounted on. Well, if you look at the substrate for the IC, it's got this ground layer at the bottom, and that's actually an interface. When the IC gets mounted onto the package using Smart Mount, that bottom interface on the IC is mapped to the top layer of the package, and that ensures that the chip is offset properly. So that's the way Smart Mount has worked since it was introduced. Let's take a look at another example, though. In this case, I've got a flange package that's mounted onto a board, and the package is modeled using a thick metal at the bottom layer. So if this bottom layer got mapped onto the board, which is the higher level technology, that means the package will actually appear to be sunk into the board layer. And you can see that if I go up to the board technology and I do a 3D view, you can see the package here appears too thin. And that's because the bottom layer of the package substrate is getting merged into the board top layer. Well, in ADS 2021, we've added some new options for Smart Mount, which enable proper alignment for these situations. So in this case, instead of mapping the layer, I'm going to pick an alignment setting which stacks the package on top of the board. And now when I go up to the board level with this setting, you can see that the flange package is offset appropriately. And that's what the new Smart Mount options do in 2021. They give you more flexibility to assemble technologies in the way that you want as different situations arise. Okay, that wraps it up for this short demo. What I've shown here are just a few of the new features for layout and assembly in ADS 2021. For more information, check out the ADS download page on the Keysight Knowledge Center.